An already thin Leafs blue line is now being pushed to its limits. We'll discuss that more here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, David Morassutti, and he's back. Well,
Yep.
listening on audio.
Yep, like a bad penny.
We made the call to the bullpen. Yesterday was Jose. Today, it's Frank.
Hi, everybody.
Friend of the show, actually a real big favorite of a lot of people on the show. Frank Stanisci is back with Mike away this week. And Frank, you came on here. We were getting ready to record, and you were in your festive red. A lot of red.
I'm going to be honest. These are my jammies. I'm wearing my jammies. These are my Montreal. No, just kidding. They're not my Montreal Canadian jammies. They're just red. They could
Wrong
be Red
podcast,
Wings.
Frank.
They
Wrong
could be
podcast.
Flames. They could be any team, but they're not any of them. They're just red. That's all they're.
Yeah. So I appreciate Frank.
They're Mickey.
Oh, look at that.
Okay,
Mickey
so
Mouse.
they're not NHL licensed jammies.
They're not affiliated with any team, just your favorite childhood.
There you go. The girlfriend, the sweetie. Yeah. She's a Mickey-fied person, totally Mickey-fied. In fact, we're going for sure. She said we're going in 28 because Mickey turns 150 or something.
Wow.
Something like that. He gets old. He's old.
Yeah, he's old.
20s or something. Oh, so it's 100 years probably. But yeah, listen, the old man's here to keep David company.
Keep me company. Keep me
in a situation where the Toronto Maple Leafs. Well, I'll let David. He's the host, so I'll back off. I'll back off. I gotta back off.
No,
I gotta know my place.
Hey, your place is now having to read this. Like Craig Berube, it felt like he was reading an Italian construction company's lunch order when he was reading out all the injuries that the Leafs are currently dealing with. And, we knew that Chris Tanev, I kind of noted on yesterday's podcast that there was going to be some sort of update on him. David Pagnotta had reported that there's a good chance he could be out for the rest of the regular season.
Maybe June.
Well, we didn't get a confirmation on that per se from Craig Berube, but apparently he is going to meet with surgeons this week about a possible operation for his groin.
Oh boy,
that's a groin injury, not good, especially when it requires surgery. So that is a concern for sure. A defenseman that I think the Leafs have missed greatly this year, hasn't seen him a lot, obviously, this year. So he's the first one. Then Brandon Carlo, some positive news. Brandon Carlo was skating on the ice. It looks like he is. They believe he should be available to return on as we're recording this for Tuesday against the Panthers. He had an infection that impacted his recovery from foot surgery. I think there was a plate in there that caused a little bit of a concern, and he had an infection. Anytime you're dealing with operations and infections, those take a lot longer to heal. They can cause a lot of issues for sure. Anthony Stolarz has been skating but remains indefinite with some sort of mystery issue. William Nylander placed on the injured reserve, but that felt like more of a formality because they needed to call up a defenseman. And why did they have to call up a defenseman? Oh, yes, Jake McCabe, out likely a week, maybe more, with a lower body injury. And then also Dakota Josh.
They're down to one top four defenseman.
Yeah.
One.
Two, if you consider OEL was the third pairing defense last year, but we needed the.
I give OEL.
Yeah. So here's the long list, by the way. Dakota Josh was also still dealing with the lacerated kidney. I don't expect him to be back anytime soon. That sounds
that's
like a very
dangerous
painful
injury, by the way.
But here's Anadolu kind of all laying it out for us here. Boy, that's a lot of injuries, Frank.
It's obviously not something you want to deal with, and I'm trying to take a closer look at it. Jake, it really is those three defensemen. That there is the tough part. The goaltender, as in Stolarz, is a problem. But one thing the Leafs have been lucky this year, and I say lucky, that their goaltending has been very good from the two guys that are left. If one assumes by last season's play that Anthony Stolarz was the number one goaltender, number 2 and 3 are doing a really good job.
Yeah, like the one injury out of all these, other than I'll put Dakota Josh aside because he's a bottom 6 guy. But out of like all those injuries they've had, the one that hasn't really impacted this team, frankly, has been Anthony Stolarz, just because of how well Dennis Hildeby has played with Stolarz out. So
he's outplayed the guys in front of him.
Yeah, I mean he's had better results. I mean, ever since he had the shutout, Joseph Woll has kind of struggled the last couple of games. Hildeby came in and obviously got them that win against Winnipeg, but we'll get into kind of a breakdown of who we expect to play against Florida a little later in the show. But the obvious concern with the Jake McCabe injury is that is a player who has taken on such a big role this season. One of the very few defensemen, that brings physicality, that plays in all situations, is a positive goal differential player on this team. And so I do think that there is, considering everything that has gone wrong for the Leafs this year, losing Jake McCabe on top of not having Tanev, really, it just really puts an exclamation mark on just how tough this season has been. Like I was looking at, and I guess we'll dive a little deeper into how they'll combat all these injuries. But the one thing that I think people need to truly understand with the Leafs this year, the blue line has struggled. Most definitely. Like, this has not been the same blue line as last year, clearly, because they've had a lot of injuries and guys have not played up to snuff. This is also a team that has allowed the most shots on goal per game in the NHL this year. No team, they've barely edged out. I will say they have barely edged out the Sharks and the Blue Jackets. It's not company you want to be with. And there's only one team that has, as in the top 5 or bottom 5 in shots allowed per game, that I view as a contender, and that's the Minnesota Wild, who are 5th in this category. So this is the Jake McCabe one, like that. Like when he left the game against the Islanders, that changed the complexion of the game. You lose him, you saw how tough that was, because you're expecting him to be the one to kind of keep things in line with the lead, although even with Jake McCabe around, it hasn't exactly gone right either. But Frank, what do you kind of brought it up a little bit? What do you think the Leafs are going to miss most without Jake McCabe in the lineup?
Well, I think the physicality and I think the fact that he is one of the only top defensemen they have left. We have a situation with Rielly where I don't know if it's true or not, but the internet was ablaze with the 5-on-5 negative statistics for him. I'm disappointed. What disappoints me about Rielly isn't that he's not playing well. It's simply because the way he's not playing well, like he's not being very intelligent. And I'm not trying to put him down and try to say that he's not very bright. That's not what I'm saying, because what we're talking here always, we don't talk about personal. We don't look at them from a personal angle. We're looking at them from a professional hockey player angle. and Rielly is a very experienced quarterback for their offense, and if he can't succeed in that role, and we already know that the team doesn't depend on him defensively, he has very little to offer. And I find it so hard to believe, because this guy has character. You know, he's a guy that we've seen through the years that has stood up for the team when the team needs it most. So this is what's frustrating to me, to not see the kind of improvement that I think that should be a fair expectation of this guy.
Yeah. So how about this? We're going to take a break, and we're going to, I do have this question of, how do the Leafs survive, or not even survive? How do they get by without the Jake McCabe injury?
Oof.
One notable return, as we mentioned before, could potentially help in that regard, and few players stepping up. So we'll kind of discuss that. We'll also look at the matchup against the Panthers, who themselves are dealing with their fair share of injuries as well. So we'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real, managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control, and who has the time to track every transaction, hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. You know, I love how it tracks all the different subscriptions. And look, if you're a person that hates having to hunt down customer service numbers, the great thing about Rock Money is that it tracks it down in the app, and you can cancel the subscription. The automatic transaction categorization is also a game changer. You can finally see where exactly your money goes each month. You can set budgets, goals, and get personalized insights, receive real-time alerts for larger transactions, upcoming bills, and low balances. It even consolidates your checking, savings, loans, and investments into a single dashboard, so you get a clear view of your entire financial picture. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goal faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Welcome back here to the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti. Joining me is my good Frank Stanisci. And I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. And also, if you never miss an episode, it's time to make it official. Join the Locked On Everydayer Club and get ad-free audio, access to our members-only Discord, and more, all built for our loyal fans. Click here to learn more and join your team's our community. You can go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer club to learn more. And Frank, I'm sure there's a few clubs that the Leafs are hoping that their team can get a part of, and that is the Resilience Club.
Yeah,
because they're going to need a lot of it. No Jake McCabe, no Chris Tanev. That's your shutdown pair from last year gone. Now McCabe, we've heard. The one thing I forgot to mention about this, Craig Berube said a week, maybe sooner. We have heard him say a week, and a week can turn into a month, 2 months. So I think a lot of people are holding their breath when Craig Berube said a week, maybe sooner for Jake McCabe. But the real question, we kind of brought it up here before we went into break, is how would the Leafs potentially get by without Jake McCabe? And it might be coming with reinforcements in Brandon Carlo, who I know some people, when they hear that, they kind of have to hold back any sort of potential indigestion in their stomach. I get it. He had a very rough start to the season. But as we also figured out, he wasn't exactly healthy. There was an ankle injury. He's not the most, he's not the most mobile defenseman, but he's not the, he's not he's a guy who can at least move for his size. So having him back, the Leafs are certainly hoping, and obviously this isn't 100% confirmed, but they made it seem like he is going to return, and frankly, they need him back. because they
Badly.
need somebody to take on those minutes, especially on the penalty kill with Jake McCabe out. And hopefully, Brandon Carlo won't necessarily negate the entire absence of Jake McCabe, but hopefully, in some way, he can replace some of what's going to be missed.
The Toronto Maple Leafs have a defense that has not been their best version all year. There has not been a best version. And the reason we say that is because Tanev hasn't played barely at all. He's come in for a visit and then left twice. He came in for a game and disappeared. This is not a criticism because you can't criticize injuries unless you're talking about how the team handles injuries. And there have been some questions about how the team handles injuries because there's been some I'm going to say injuries and how they progressed and not understanding how they progressed the way they have. There has been some question as far as what they do. But to get to your point, which is the defense, the good news is there's a lot of ice time that the players are getting, defensemen are getting that aren't normally the starters. They're getting a lot of experience, and it is the hope of the team, the organization, that the learning curve on them, they get on that learning curve. And so when you ask where can, the improvement or the sustainability of a good defense, where will it come from? Well, if I'm a Leaf management, I'm hoping the experience the players have had, the defensemen that have had, including Troy Stetcher, who's come in and proven to be a pretty good asset. And then the other guys that have been given ice time, a learning curve. Because, we had Myers, we were ready to ship him out to somewhere, I don't know, Siberia or something, because he really didn't look good, right? So now he doesn't look that great, but he doesn't look that bad. And at the end of the day, to answer your question very simply, the players that don't normally play defense for the Leafs, the guys that are usually in the minors or up in the press box, they've had a chance to play. Hopefully they can play up to a better version of themselves, because I don't even know if you can refer to them as playing to their potential, because really it's untapped. We really don't know what their potential is. And this is when you find out, David. I think this is when the Leafs find out what they've got. Not necessarily, they're not going to find a one or two in that group, but if they can find a 4 or a 5 or a 3 or a 4, that's a good thing, because when the players do come back, there's going to be a positive in the way they've learned to play and had the opportunity to show what they can do.
Yeah, I mean, this is a challenge to everyone on the team. You just said, like, a challenge to Morgan Rielly. We just talked about how he's really struggled. It's a challenge to Brandon Carlo to come back and hit the ground running. Troy Stetcher, who everyone has anointed the best waiver wire pickup in recent memory for this Leafs team, and it's hard to argue that. He's going to have to now, I don't know how much more you're going to be able to throw at him, but he's going to have to do more. Ekman Larsson, Simon Benoit, and you brought up Philip Myers. Like, the fact that he has to come back is not a feeling. I don't have a good feeling about that, but you
because of you.
The next best option, there ain't much. Like, Marshall Refi was recalled, but you're not throwing him in right now. So, yeah, like, there are players right now, it's a bit of a gut check time. Morgan Rielly is the big one because he's the highest paid defenseman of that group. He's the one that has not had the consistency in his game, especially defensively. It hasn't been there. And, this is a Leafs team that, unfortunately, it's a shell of what it was last year, especially now. The good thing that they do have going for them, especially for this game, is they do have home ice, so they can dictate matchups a little bit better. That's crucial going up against Florida, because you're going to want to have to figure things out. But as much as the blue line is going to be the focus, the forwards are going to have to be the ones to put in the work to help out this blue line.
Absolutely.
If we're thinking that it's all on the blue line to pick up the slack, the message has to be everybody. Everybody needs to chip in here. Otherwise, this is not going to be a very pretty sight right now. Especially considering it just has not been a good overall team effort defensively lately. Like the game against New York, a lead that went away when you didn't have Jake McCabe on the ice. That was a test. Not having your best defenseman there, and you couldn't hold the lead. It's been a problem even with Jake McCabe around. So they haven't passed the test yet, and they're going to have to find a way to do it now.
And a lot of the defensive woes can be erased by a responsible offense or responsible forwards. And at the end of the day, I think we all have learned the biggest deficiency that the Maple Leaf defense has, and that is quick passes out of the zone. The guys that they've got have to grab with both hands the responsibility of one quick pass and get the puck out of the zone. The one suffering point that the Toronto Maple Leafs have had, and you talked about shots on goal and how they're on the wrong end of the shots on goal. The biggest reason is sustained pressure by the opposition in the offensive zone against the Maple Leafs and them being unable to clear the puck. So that's what has to happen. And the funny thing is, it isn't understanding how to do that isn't the hard part. It's about moving your feet and being in the right position. So hopefully with the experience gained by these young players who aren't normally starters, hopefully they can, I hate to oversimplify this and I hate to make it sound simple, but that first pass isn't that difficult to make. You just got to make it. You got to make the move. You got to move quick. And that's what they have to do. They have to do less thinking and do more basically on instinct or impulse, right? And that's the problem. It's when young defensemen are thinking about the move they should make, that split second makes the difference between clearing the puck and having it hemmed in the zone.
Yeah. No, and again, it's the Leafs' problem when you allow so many shots. It speaks to how much they spend, defending and not really defending. They're not blocking as many shots either. I looked; they were 18th in the league in block shots, which is interesting when Auston Matthews is among the leader in forwards and block shots, but they're not negating those opportunities like they were in the past, right? They're not doing a good enough job in that respect. And Craig Berube added that the injuries have been tough for this team. Frankly, it's understandable, right? Like when you're missing, people are saying, "Oh, other teams dealing with injuries." This is a blue line that relied on its depth and not a workhorse, right? There is no Cale Makar, Victor Hedman, Drew Doughty. You don't have a player you can throw out their 25 plus minutes to eat a lot of those tough minutes. You don't have that. Yeah, Matthew Schaefer too. Yeah, he's in that boat as well. They just do not have that player, right? So it was very much a blue line by committee. When the committee is not as strong, you see it. Now, defensively, the forwards I'll have to start doing their job too a bit better, as we said. I think that's going to be the challenge for them going into this game. Speaking of the game, the Leafs, for the first time in 2026, will go up against the defending Stanley Cup champions, who have had a very interesting season. In more ways than one. We will go through what their lineup's going to look like, how they've been playing lately, and more here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues here. David Morassutti, and joining me is my friend Frank Stanisci, and it is the Panthers versus the Leafs, and it's an interesting matchup between these two teams because at one point these two teams were the top dogs during the regular season in the Atlantic Division. The playoff rivalry that was, and in some cases wasn't, considering how the last year's playoff series ended between these two teams. Florida, we know their deal. They back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, have had a lot of injuries going into the year. Obviously the biggest ones, Matthew Tkachuk, likely going to be hopefully back for them soon. losing Alexander Barkov for the season. That was the biggest blow that they took, and they've had kind of a sprinkle of injuries kind of all around. But they currently sit 2 points out of a playoff spot with 47 points. The Leafs are 2 points back of Florida with 45 points. So there is it's close, but if I told you, Frank, going into the season that on January 6th, both the Leafs and Panthers would be on the outside looking in on a playoff spot, your reaction would be?
You might not like this, but I wouldn't be surprised with the Leafs. I'd be only mildly surprised with Florida. They're a veteran team that gets rolling late in the season. This is what they've done the past 2 years. They've had terrible starts for whatever reason, and then when push comes to shove, they start to improve. So we'll find out if they can do it again, because that's what they're going to need to do. And in fact, that's what the Leafs have to do. They're going to have to improve, and they're really going to have to. They can't lose those games that they've been losing. An overtime loss because the defenseman decides he's going to help a forward when there's 3-on-3 going on. No, they've got to play smart. They've got to do the right thing. And this goes back to your conversation about the defense. The defense has to play smarter. That's what they have to do.
Yep. And frankly, the only good thing the Leafs have, one good thing the Leafs have going into this game is they're playing at home, where they have the second best. And I'm not lying to you. They have the second best record overall in the NHL at home at 14-5-5. Second best winning percentage at home. Only the Colorado
They haven't done
Avalanche.
that much over the years. In recent memory, they haven't done that much. They've had
Colorado,
trouble.
The Colorado Avalanche, absolutely ridiculous. 17-0-2. They don't have a single regulation loss at home this season.
Wow.
The only difference, the Colorado Avalanche on the road, 14-3-5. The Leafs, 5-10-2.
Yeah.
If you want to know what's plagued the Leafs this year, defensively haven't been good enough. Their road record, it's the worst road record in the league. Worse than Calgary, worse than Winnipeg, worse than St. Louis, worse than a lot of teams that, frankly, the Leafs should have a better record on the road against. And so this is going to be the first game for the Leafs since Auston Matthews passed Matt Sundin for the franchise lead in goals. So I'm assuming some sort of ceremony will be
at home
expected there.
Will Mats be there?
Will Mats be there?
He sent a message from Sweden.
He did put out a video. I don't know if he's in Sweden. That's the big question there, is whether he will be in town. Maybe they'll try to find a way to get it. It would be nice if he's there for this sort of situation. But the Leafs are going to have to find a way to beat a Florida Panthers team that, frankly, have had a very up and down year. And I'm just going to pull up their lineup right now because it's tough right now. I mean, their top line is Anton Lundell, Luosterainen, and Sam Reinhart. Like, Reinhardt's been a top 6 guy for them, but Luosterainen and Lundell, them with Marchand was their third line last year. The injuries have really forced a lot of moving around when it comes to the lineup. No Tkachuk has also changed the fact that Marchand is now playing in the top 6 role. Sam Miskevich, Rodriguez, and AJ Greer on the third line for Hagee, Bennett, and Marchand on the second line for those that haven't seen, or those that are not watching on YouTube. Boqvist, Kunin, and Studnicka are the fourth line. Then on the blue line, you have Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad. So that top pairing remains intact. You have Nico Mikkola, Balinskis, then you have Sabrango and Jeff Petrie as the third pairing. And then I'm assuming it's going to be Bobrovsky in goal because they did have a back-to-back this weekend. But the injuries, Tkachuk out, Barkov out, Kulikov out, Nasik out. And you can't see, you might not be able to see because of the thing. Seth Jones also has been ruled out. He is day-to-day right now. So this is an equally hurt Florida Panthers team. So the Leafs can't use the injury excuse right now because the Panthers can say, all right, hold my beer, because we're literally going through the same issues. But Frank, the one thing also the Leafs have going into this game has been the surge of Auston Matthews. The Leafs, given all the struggles they've had, they have recorded points in 6 straight games. They have a 4-0-2 record. Auston Matthews has been a man on a mission with 6 goals and 4 assists in his last 4 games.
You'd think the Olympics were coming.
Yeah, he's really picking a great time to get himself ready for the U.S., huh?
Well, he's got a responsibility, to see and all that stuff, if that's what he's going to wear. David, honestly, the thing about Matthews is what he hasn't done all season, he did in recent memory, in the recent few games. And that is used his size and speed to get to the net ahead of the defenseman and make some, pass the goaltender and throw the puck in the net. And his shot looked like it had some velocity, looked like he had some authority the way he was shooting, because all year this year and last year too often as well, his one-timers were not hitting the net, or they were not hitting the net with speed. And that game there, those 2 goals, I love those 2 goals for him. That's Auston Matthews. Those goals are the Auston Matthews goals. They're perfect for what he does, and hopefully he has more of them in him.
Yeah. No, I think I do think that there's, when your best player is playing like your best player, it makes you feel a lot better about your team's chances. That's for sure. And
well,
so
that's because your team, your players that aren't your best player don't have to worry about being their best.
Well, that's it too, right?
Playing over their head. Yeah,
So,
it's important. You're 100% right there, man. He's got to be the top player on the team.
Yeah.
There's no question.
So, as you know, they got to take advantage of the fact they're at home as well. He's played really well at home. Obviously, the hat trick in the last game. Played at home. I was there for that game. It was it's pretty good to see Auston Matthews getting back to what we know Auston Matthews can do. But if you're the Leafs, if you're the rest of this team, what would be one kind of key to lock in on for them to beat the Panthers tonight?
The commitment to defense and the ability to hound the puck. And also to make, again, I'll go back to the other thing I said about the defense, and this is the forwards too, is to make sure that the exit from their zone is quick and they dispatch immediately. There can be no hesitation, because if there's any hesitation, we've known from the last playoff series and the regular season for the Panthers, if you hesitate, you lose the puck.
The big one here too is when you look at the Leafs, the Panthers, we know exactly what their bread and butter, their identity is. Hard on the forecheck, forced turnovers, first extra time in the offensive zone, make the blue line get tired, right? Exhaust them. And the Leafs are going to have to do a better job of breaking out and not spending as much time in their own zone. They're going to have to find a way to play more time in Tampa's end. And so I do think that's a key for me. It's similar to yours. You got to be a lot better defensively, because that defense can transition to offense. And it also comes down to being disciplined, avoid the turnovers. Panthers love the counterattack. We saw that in the playoffs quite a bit. So hopefully that's something the Leafs can do a much better job. They've been playing better. Like, they haven't been outplayed in the last few games, but there are habits that are still creeping in that the Panthers would love to take advantage of. So
and
hopefully
the worst habit in my mind that the Leafs have, and Rielly is the best example of the problem, and that is a trust in your teammate. We saw an overtime game be lost because Rielly decided to leave the front of the net and go help a forward who's trying to get the opponent, get the puck from the opponent. And then they gave away a prime opportunity. You cannot do that with Florida. You give them prime opportunities. You give them easy opportunities. They're going to score. They have too many guys that are for Hagee. They have guys on that team, Bennett, that will kill you if you give them free opportunities in the defense, in your defensive zone. So there has to be responsibility. There has to be a responsibility for the defense to take their man and trust their teammate to take the other man. And the defenseman shouldn't go in the corner when the forward's with a defensive player. I know you want to overload in the zone, like in the corners. You want to have more men in the corner to win the puck. But there's a time and a place for that. And the Leafs have not proven to be a team that understands that important difference between going in the corner for the sake of going and going with basically a plan and an intent.
Yeah, they do. They need to come out with similar to New Jersey, where they knew they were shorthanded and they had to be a lot more detailed in what they're trying to do. And I think that's a big that's gonna have to be a big part of trying to get past this very tough stretch they're gonna have right now.
Big game from the team would go a long way towards the playoffs. The momentum that they could muster because of a good game played well, because they're going to have to play well to beat Florida. So they have a good game, they win. It'll be because they played a good game, and the kind of game that the guys that aren't the regulars can hang their hat on.
Exactly. Well, we'll break down on the next episode. We'll break down the game, which will hopefully be a Leafs victory, and other news around the league. I'm sure it's been quite a busy time going around in the NHL. There's we'll have to discuss if the Leafs are going to be which side of the fence they're going to be on with the trade deadline. Still got some time, obviously, but you're going to have to get to that point where we're going to have to figure out where you land in contention this year. So we'll discuss that next on this edition of Locked On Leafs podcast. I want to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. I want to thank you all for subscribing. Make sure you go and subscribe on YouTube. Go follow the show as well on Instagram at Locked On Leafs. You can also follow Frank at Candid Frank Live and go find all of his stuff on YouTube as well. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.